A massive wildfire in Wood Buffalo National Park is encroaching on a whooping crane nesting area. Whooping cranes are endangered, and there are concerns in nearby Fort Smith about how this year's wildfires could affect the flock. Forest fires are a natural part of the boreal forest, and species in the north do know how to adapt. But larger, more intense fires are becoming the norm, fueled partially by climate change. So, what does that mean for plants and animals here in the Northwest Territories? I spoke with two N.W.T scientists to find out. Thank you both so much for being here with me today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
I'll start with one species in particular, and then we can kind of broaden everything out. But I do know that one species that has been impacted by intense wildfires is the red-sided garter snake, which had its habitat devastated in 2023. So I'm wondering, Joanna, if you could give us just a quick update on how it's been doing since that event.
Sure, yeah. There's a research project being led out of Thompson Rivers University looking at how the garter snakes are doing after the 2023 fires. So we've been involved in helping out with that. And yeah, I mean, the good news is there are still snakes there. Their den and a lot of the surrounding habitat was definitely burned. And, you know, we're seeing things like signs of predation, possibly linked to, you know, not a lot of cover on site. But also, yeah, we're still learning. That project's not done yet, and we're still learning really about what those impacts of the fire have been on the snakes.
So wildlife in general in the Northwest Territories and across the north and boreal forests has been coexisting and evolving with wildfire for millennia. Certainly changes in the fire regimes that are occurring and anticipated to occur with climate change may create some challenges if fires become larger, burn more intensely, or burn more frequently. And that will certainly have some impacts, both positive and negative, on northern species. Some of the long-term predicted changes in wildlife habitats with climate change and with wildfires, the potential for conversion from more mature and conifer-dominated forests to more open habitats and deciduous forests. And when you have large-scale changes in habitat like that, you're going to see shifts in the wildlife communities to wildlife that occupy those types of habitats.
Joanna, can you speak at all to what the shifts in species would look like if that happened and these forests underwent a significant change?
So I work quite a bit on bats, so I can tell you that when in terms of natural roosting habitat for bats, they need big, old, standing trees and sometimes standing dead trees. So yeah, so if we see shifts in the type of forest where those become harder to find, that could potentially affect their distribution.
Yeah, let's focus on bats for a minute. And by doing that, I'm actually going to talk about whooping cranes for just a second, because there is a big fire in Wood Buffalo National Park that's threatening the nesting grounds for whooping cranes. So if that situation were to happen to bats, for example, some of the species we have here, how big of a disruption would it be for their habitats, these dead trees that they use, if those went away and they kept going back to the same place every year and suddenly it wasn't there? What would that do?
Well, like Brad said earlier, all the species that live up here have evolved and in this environment that naturally has wildfire. So that's normal. A species like bats and others that are really mobile, they might be able to move away from the fire. They might not necessarily be directly impacted by the burn. So then it becomes a matter of, well, is there still habitat elsewhere they can use? And over time, you know, where the place that burned will come back to a stage that's appropriate for them. Other species that maybe are not necessarily so mobile have evolved ways of either surviving a fire, you know, by going underground or in like a little moist hideaway, or even if there is some mortality directly from the fire, then those populations can recolonize afterwards from somewhere nearby.
Are there any concerns right now or any species that concern you when it comes to these more intense and frequent wildfires that we're experiencing?
Yeah, I think in general, any range-restricted species or species that aren't mobile and can't get out of the way are susceptible to these, have these acute effects of wildfire. Certainly fire, it'll depend a lot on the time of year that it's taking place. If a fire takes place in a particular time of year when a species is calving or giving birth and you have young at vulnerable stages, that can be a challenge.
And are you noticing any differences? I mean, you spoke to differences of the land, but differences in species or the way that they're growing or adapting, just given that we've been having these really intense, frequent wildfire seasons?
I would say that a lot of these answers are still to come. Certainly the climate is changing and has been changing for a while, but there's a lot of research gaps, and our government, along with partners, conduct a lot of monitoring ourselves and support a lot of research into this, but a lot of the questions are still being answered.
In our conservation and management work, we're always trying to think big picture about what are all the factors that affect wildlife, and fire is one of them. When we're in my job for species at risk, when we're assessing species and management planning and so on, we're thinking about that natural relationship with fire, but also about what might be different now and moving forward as you know, the climate and fire changes. And so thinking about all the factors that a species is dealing with, including fire, and where can we, you know, where can we act and maybe try and support. So for the snakes, again, as an example, this research is going on the impacts of fire on snakes, but we've also, through that research, learned that roadkill, it seems to be pretty big impact on that population. So we can, now that's something we can work on directly, right? We can try and have an impact on that, while the fire is another thing that the snakes are dealing with.
So it's taking a holistic look at what we can do, but then also recognizing the wildfires around us as something that we have to deal with.
I think so. Yeah.
Exactly.